let's talk about this company called Windsurf. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, it's that was all over in the news. It's
Man, they are getting
time for the
so
employees.
screwed. Like I saw the news a few weeks back that they are getting acquired by OpenAI, and I see news all over the place that their employees are so happy they're going to be rich. And then somehow that deal did not go through, and the news that come out recently was a disaster. Basically, I think this is quite common in the startup world, but like how it's done is so bad for their employees. Basically, what happened is Google signed a license deal that's 2.4 billion with that company. It's not an investment. Google just signed the deal and poached their CEO. So now that company basically has very low value. And yeah, it's super bad, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just I think it may be also a case where a lot of these larger companies they're trying to bypass these big M&A deals where they're subjected to scrutiny. So, they're going with the easier approach, just acqui-hire. But for the employees that are not part of the core team or who has negotiating leverage per se, it's just a horrible deal, right?
It
Like,
is horrible, man. I remember when I initially saw the news about this company, I was like, oh, it's a CEO that I think dropped out of MIT. It's a young CEO and super talented. He's gonna bring his company to maybe IPO or late stage, right? But it's at Series C. I think it has 100 million ARR or something. So it's very solid company. I think the run rate is probably really good. I have no idea why they have to do that, but like it's really bad.
unless the employees get some kind of compensation package or some form of top up, effectively was the CEO leaving, and also with potentially with some other businesses, their customers leaving with an uncertain future. The employees that have been there effectively took a haircut on their equities, or a pretty big haircut.
Yeah, also I read the news that they recently have an acquisition. They finally acquired by this company called Cognition AI. So the two products kind of have a synergy. The Windsurf is basically like a coding assistant, and Cognition AI is like an agent that assign different tasks. So it's almost like a scheduler for tasks. And then they're both invested by the same VC. I think it's a Clarence Perkins. So there's probably on VC, all those board members are pushing it. But I'm a little bit surprised that they don't have any resistance from the VC from the board. It's already Series C, right? So the CEO is now majority. Why would they let the deal go like this with Google?
Yeah, I think we might just dive into it. I would suspect potentially the investor had a whale. It's likely some of the bigger investors plus the founder or maybe the core team, and then the majority of the other employees kind of just got the shorter end of the deal. And this kind of propelled a question of just is it like there are just more risks to joining the startup ecosystem now? Picture someone who has worked there maybe for 3, 4 years, who has significant equity, but you're not really part of the core team. Or maybe you're a recent hire, but not that recent. Maybe you worked there for 2 years. You've invested a significant amount of time in it already. And then what do you do now? I guess you take the L and then move on. But the question that remains is like, how should we select the startups, right? Because before, it's if you knew the founder was pretty strong, and then ideally if they've hit product market fit, then it's a pretty sweet spot to join because the business is on its S curve. But these days, if you look at a lot of these businesses, they're doing fine. They can probably scale, but then in the middle, somehow they decided to just they were acqui-hired by other businesses. And that's, I think I have to put more thought into what's the key driving factors into these kind of, semi M&A situations. How do you kind of identify them earlier? However, it's becoming a real risk.
Yeah, I think it's also they're trying, big corporations try to bypass the antitrust regulation, but this is actually really bad for the startup ecosystem because I don't know if you're aware, like, a lot of seed round, early stage startup, the hiring is incredibly difficult. And it's because people know the risk, right? The higher the talent is, the more they're aware of the risk, right? They can either go to an established company like Fan, or they can join the startup with people that they trust, or they can join a startup as a founder. Like the incentive for joining an early stage startup is just so low. So I think it's really hard for them to get good talents. But then you would imagine at Series C, it's relatively safe. Worst case scenario, it become a zombie startup getting acquired by some already like public company. But when that route disappears, or when they have a way to bypass it, I think it's really bad for the whole talent pool in the startup world, because this way it puts more stress on the founder because they will have a lot of challenge hiring people. So I think it's almost like it's a vicious cycle. So if founders are not going to take their people with them, then in the future it will be hard for them to recruit. I think it's a fair feedback. But speaking of MIT dropouts, right? The other company similar to this is Scale AI.
Yeah, I think you're probably more aware of the whole flow of the story of Scale AI, but it's kind of a similar situation, right? So the CEO and then core team kind of just hopped over into Meta. The employees, I'm not sure what deal they got. I suspect it's not the greatest. We'll find out more as more information kind of comes out. But also, some of their large customers even left, right? Once that happened. I just don't see how that's good for the employees. I think my issue is that it just creates a tension in the startup ecosystem where before, even if the odds are low, you are still working as a team, right? You join a company, you join a mission, you join a CEO, um, and then you guys are tackling an issue or together. But now it's like, okay, so we are tackling a mission, but my leadership can effectively just leave with a bigger pay package while I'm kind of stuck here holding the bag. So yeah, I don't think this tension is the greatest. Maybe the solution for this is just have M&A not be as difficult. We'll see how things develop. But from our perspective, for me, I think it's, from if you're an employee, you definitely want to take a take a more deeper look into what's happening here. If this company is maybe some strategic like acquisition that a larger company want to make, because there's a lot of M&A deals coming now, or these acqui-hire deals. So
Yeah, I think there's two ways to look at it. One is the nature of this company really subject to like this type of acqui-hire, right? So for example, when they're just doing coding assistant or AI bots for coding assistant, they're just serving a function. So in a world when you have Google, Microsoft, Meta, all these big companies, it's very easy for them to just acquire part of the company doing the acqui-hire versus if the company is actually dominating the whole vertical that has like tight integrated business partners, then it's a little bit harder, or it's less likely for the executives to leave. But speaking of working as a team, we know the other news when the executives are really working too close as a team. Have you heard of the
yes,
Astronomer CEO news?
that's been all over the news recently. It's
If you, for folks that have not heard it, let me just share my screen and then so that you will know what I'm talking about. Okay, so look at her face. This is
Yeah, yeah, I think that's the recently promoted underling, the head of
yeah,
HR.
so this is when the startup are the teamwork are too strong. They're a little bit too close. Look at this. Speaking of teamwork, man, they're they're getting too comfortable with each other. You have the CEO of the company, you have the CPO of the company, and then you have someone that works for the CPO that recently getting promoted. So yeah, it's sometimes the team is too strong, the chemistry is too good, and things could happen.
To be honest, like, I mean, these kind of situations probably is fairly common. It's just somehow. this just kind of propped up.
If they would just like kiss or pretend there's nothing, they probably would be fine.
On the upside, their company probably have more leads now, you know? So
Speaking of
maybe
that company, I saw that name and I was like, the name looked familiar. It turned out that this company actually tried to recruit me a few years back. And this is another of those examples of how you gauge early startups. Essentially, what they're doing, the Astronomer, they're not have nothing to do with any like space tech. They're actually doing data orchestration tool called Airflow. They're just building a wrapper on top of it to make a SaaS platform. So they timed it very well before AWS, before Microsoft building those tools. They're basically taking the open source tool. They recruit the Apache committer of that tool and say, hey, let's form a team and build a SaaS platform. And the company that incubated them is the same company that incubated Snowflake. So they have a lot of shared enterprise customer. Oh, it's a pretty easy sell, right? If a VC incubated Snowflake, that same set of data customers, they can send them to the astronomer, right? But I think the issue with this type of business, I guess, for engineer perspective, is it's not really good for career growth, right? Because if you look at it, it's a quick, reproducible money grab for VC, right? Because they might not go public, they might not get acquired either, but they can probably be a good cash generating business. They can probably sell to like other companies, or it will be like a later on will probably be like a private equity deal. But the technology is nothing fancy. I think for engineers joining early stage startup, it's either you're trying to make a lot of money and you really believe in the process, or you gain experience that you think will help you like sell your marketable skill. But in this case, a data orchestrator that everybody's using and many people just set up on AWS, and what they're selling is basically we'll provide you a service so you don't have to hire a special engineer to set things up on AWS, and we'll handle all your support tickets for you related to this data orchestrator. I don't think people work there really have some kind of trajectory as an engineer for that specific task because I think transferable skill and marketable skill are very important. That's my take.
what else I've learned from that is it is a masterclass in distribution.
Why do you say that?
Think about it. A lot of people online probably has never heard of this company before. Now, probably most of Silicon Valley has heard of this company. It's just all over Twitter. I've seen posts from like even the Flexport CEO saying, "Oh, I've never heard of this company before." But what's driving down cost by 80%? That seems helpful. Maybe I'll go give him a call. I was like, okay. I think that
So
was in
it's
one of the
so it's so it's
comments.
probably
So,
good
you
for the
know, it's
business.
probably, I think lead generation might just increase significantly. So it would be funny if this is all orchestrated, but I was supposed this might be real. But hey, you know, maybe it's the way for distribution on B2B is to just make some viral content. You know,
Yeah.
and
So for
that
all the
will
SaaS
spread
companies
it.
struggling to sell, hey, here's your playbook.
Yeah, maybe the key is not, you know, sometimes it's not to pitch your value proposition.
Maybe the
It's to
key is not to buy an expensive billboard on San Francisco that nobody wants to look at. Just create something like this.
yeah, just have an affair and get caught on kiss cam.
Anyways, that's it for today's content.